The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles under a dome of pure crystal. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their designated areas, each space designed for their specific needs. The Zephyrians floated in, their energy fields, their bodies made of living crystal that caught and reflected the chamber's lights. The Hive Collective delegates clicked and buzzed in their corner, six-legged creatures with compound eyes that never seemed to blink. Near the center, the ethereals existed as shifting clouds of gas contained within transparent spheres. Council leader Vextar raised one of his forearms to call for order. The Zephyrian's voice rang through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. We gather today to discuss trade routes through the Outer Rim territories. The meeting proceeded as it had for thousands of years. Each species had their role. The Zephyrians provided military protection with their energy-based weapons and fast ships. The Hive Collective manufactured goods on countless factory worlds. The ethereals carried messages across the galaxy faster than any other species. Dozens of smaller civilizations provided raw materials, labor, or specialized services. It was a system that worked. Peace had lasted for over 3,000 years. Wars were rare and small. Most conflicts ended with negotiations and trade agreements. The galaxy was prosperous and stable. Then the alarms began to sound. Technician Zolra, a young Zephyrian with bright blue crystal formations on her head, rushed into the chamber. Her energy field flickered with excitement and fear. Council leader, we have detected something unusual. Vextar's crystals dimmed with annoyance. What kind of unusual? Asteroid collision? Solar flare? No, sir. It's a ship. But not like any ship in our databases. The chamber fell quiet. Every representative turned their attention to the technician. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, every type of ship, every propulsion system, every energy signature had been cataloged and studied. Show us, Vextar commanded. A massive holographic display appeared above the chamber. It showed the galaxy's edge, where civilized space met the great unknown. There, moving steadily toward them, was a dot of light. The readings, scrolled beside it, showed impossible numbers. The energy signature is enormous, Zolra explained, her voice shaking. Bigger than our largest dreadnoughts. But the design, we can't identify the propulsion system. It doesn't match anything we know. Hive Queen Ziexuth spoke next, her translator, converting her clicks and buzzes into words. From where does it come? From the empty sectors, Your Majesty. From the regions we marked as uninhabitable during the Great Survey. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Great Survey had happened over 2,000 years ago, when the Galactic Council sent exploration fleets to map every system in their region of the galaxy. Those outer rim sectors had been found to be either empty or hostile to life. No one had bothered to go back. How long until it reaches our territory? Asked Ethereal Prime, its gaseous form swirling with patterns that indicated deep thought. At current speed, approximately 7 standard days, Your Excellence. Vextar stood, his crystal body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the chamber walls. Send a scout fleet to investigate. Use Protocol 7 for first contact. Protocol 7 was standard procedure for unknown ships. A small fleet would approach, broadcast greeting messages in all known languages, and attempt peaceful contact. It had worked for every first contact situation in recorded history. The scout fleet launched within hours. 12 fast Zephyrian interceptors, equipped with the most advanced sensors and communication arrays in the galaxy. They were the best ships for the job, crewed by experienced pilots and diplomats. The galaxy waited. Day 2 brought no news. The scouts had reached the unknown ship but sent no reports. This was unusual but not alarming. Sometimes first contact took time, especially with species that had never encountered galactic civilization. Day 3 brought worry. The scouts' scheduled check-in passed with silence. Long-range sensors showed their ships were still there, still moving with the unknown vessel, but they weren't responding to any calls. Day 4 brought fear. A second scout fleet was sent, heavier ships this time, with more weapons and shields. They reached the location where the first fleet should have been. They found nothing. No ships, no debris, no energy signatures. The first scout fleet had simply vanished without a trace. The second fleet sent frantic reports back to the Council, before something happened to them too. Their last message was simple. It's huge. It's coming. We can't. Then silence. By day 5, panic had begun to spread through the galactic communication networks. The unknown ship continued its steady approach, and now it was close enough for the Council's sensors to get better readings. The OW ship was massive. Not just large, but impossibly huge. It stretched for over 20 kilometers from end to end, with a hull that seemed to absorb sensor beams rather than reflect them. The design was unlike anything in galactic records. Where Council ships were elegant curves and artistic designs, this vessel was all angles and straight lines. It looked like it had been built for one purpose only: war. What do we know about them? The empty sectors? Vextar asked his advisors. They had gathered in emergency session trying to understand what they faced. Very little, Council Leader, replied Chief Archivist Melton. The Great Survey marked them as uninhabitable, high radiation, unstable stars, no planet suitable for life as we understand it. Could we have missed something? It's possible. The survey was thorough, but not perfect. Perhaps there were species living in conditions we thought impossible. Then, why haven't they contacted us before now? No one had an answer. Day 6 brought a transmission. Not from the approaching ship, but from the Outer Rim territories themselves. Emergency signals from mining stations, research outposts, and automated systems that had been operating in those regions for centuries. They were all going dark. One by one, facilities that had operated without problems for hundreds of years simply stopped responding. There was no sign of attack, no distress calls, no explanation. They just went silent as if someone had turned off a switch. The pattern was clear. The unknown ship was following a path through the Outer Rim, and everything in its wake fell silent. By day 7, the ship had reached the edge of civilized space. It stopped there, hanging motionless just outside Zephyrian territory. Long-range scans showed it clearly now, a massive wedge of dark metal bristling with unknown weapons and sensor arrays. But still, it made no aggressive moves. It simply waited. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Every representative was present, even species that rarely participated in galactic politics. The chamber hummed with nervous energy and fearful whispers. "We must assume hostile intent," declared General Kexmar, the Zephyrian military commander. "No peaceful species travels in such a vessel." "We should try communication again," insisted Ethereal Prime. "Perhaps their technology is so different, they cannot receive our transmissions." "What of our missing scouts?" asked Hive Queen Zizexth. 2 entire fleets vanished without explanation. Vextar looked at the holographic display showing the massive ship hanging at the edge of their space, like a dark omen. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, they had never encountered anything like this. They had grown comfortable in their established order, confident in their technology and their place in the universe. Now something from the unknown regions had arrived, something that made their greatest warships look like toys in comparison, and it was waiting. The question that haunted every mind in the chamber was simple. Waiting for what? The massive ship had been silent for 3 days. It sat at the border of Zephyrian space like a dark mountain floating in the void. Every attempt at communication had failed. The Council's best linguists had tried every known language, every mathematical sequence, every form of peaceful greeting in their vast databases. Nothing worked. Then, without warning, the ship moved. It didn't use any visible engines or energy trails. One moment it was at the border, the next it was deep inside Zephyrian territory, positioned near their main military base on the planet Kethamor. The movement was so fast that sensors barely registered it happening. Alarms blared throughout the yacht system. Zephyrian warships scrambled to respond, their crystal hulls gleaming as they powered up weapons and shields. Admiral Hextar, the system commander, ordered his ships to maintain a respectful distance but be ready for anything. Then the unknown ship spoke. The voice came through every communication system in the sector at once. It bypassed encryption, ignored firewalls, and somehow translated itself into perfect Zephyrian language. The voice was deep, cold, and utterly without emotion. "This is the UES retribution of the Terran Federation. You have 30 minutes to explain the fate of our colony ships." The message sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions convened on every major world. The name Terran Federation appeared in no database. No one had ever heard of this species or their ships. "Terran," muttered Chief Archivist Melton as he searched through the oldest records. "The word is unfamiliar. Perhaps it refers to their homeworld." But it was historian Yelsa, an elderly ethereal who specialized in ancient records, who found the answer. Deep in the archives, buried under layers of bureaucratic reports and forgotten surveys, she discovered a file that was over 2,000 years old. Here, she announced to the emergency council session. Pre-unification records from the Zephyrian expansion period, multiple references to primitive generation ships detected moving toward the outer rim. The holographic display showed the ancient file. The text was faded and partially corrupted, but readable. It described long, slow-moving vessels carrying what appeared to be refugees from some distant disaster. The ships were primitive by galactic standards, using chemical rockets and basic fusion engines. Species designation, unknown. Vessels detected moving toward uninhabited sectors, 7-7 through 92. Ships appear to be generational colony vessels. Propulsion, primitive. Technology level, pre-galactic. Estimated time to destination, 800 to 1,000 standard years. No immediate concern for galactic security. The file was signed by Survey Commander Thexval and dated 2,147 years ago. They were refugees, whispered Vextar. Fleeing, something heading for the empty sectors. The sectors we later claimed for mining rights, added General Kexmar, his crystal form suddenly dim with understanding. The horrible truth began to dawn on the assembled representatives. Those empty sectors hadn't remained empty. Over the centuries, the Galactic Council had granted mining rights, established research stations, and even terraforming operations in those regions. Standard procedure was to scan for intelligent life before any development began, but the scans only looked for current civilizations, not arriving colony ships. Find everything, ordered Vextar. Every mining operation, every research station, every development project in those sectors, over the past 2,000 years. The search took precious minutes while the Retribution waited in ominous silence. When the results came back, they painted a picture that made even the most hardened military commanders feel sick. Sector 77. Granted to Hive Collective Mining Consortium 1,963 years ago. Large-scale strip mining operations. Any existing structures would have been demolished as obstacles. Sector 81. Ethereal Terraforming Project 1,142 years ago. Atmospheric conversion would have been lethal to most carbon-based life forms. Sector 85. Zephyrian Research Station 1,034 years ago. Standard procedure would have cleared any debris from orbital space. The list went on and on. Dozens of sectors, hundreds of possible colony sites, all developed without any consideration for primitive human settlements that might have been established there. We killed them, said Ethereal Prime, its gaseous form swirling with patterns of deep distress. We didn't mean to, but we killed them all. We didn't know, protested Hive Queen Zizexith. The surveys showed empty space. Because we surveyed? Before they arrived, replied Historian Yelsa. By the time their ships reached those systems, we had already claimed them. As the horrific realization sank in, the 30-minute deadline approached. Admiral Hextar tried repeatedly to contact the Retribution, to explain that the killings were accidental, that the Galactic Council never meant to commit genocide. The ship didn't respond. With 5 minutes left, Vextar himself took over communications. Retribution. This is Council Leader Vextar of the Galactic Council. We have reviewed our records. We believe what happened to your people was a tragic mistake. Our expansion into those sectors was not intended to harm any intelligent species. Please respond so we can discuss this peacefully. Still silence. With 1 minute remaining, every representative in the galaxy held their breath. Military commanders prepared for the worst. Civilian populations were quietly moved to emergency shelters. No one knew what kind of weapons the massive ship carried, but they all suspected it could destroy entire fleets. The 30 minutes expired. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Retribution floated motionless in space, its dark hull reflecting no light. Sensors showed no energy buildup, no weapons powering up, no sign of imminent attack. Then Admiral Hextar noticed something strange on his displays. My sensors are malfunctioning, he reported. I'm reading impossible gravitational fluctuations, but the sensors weren't malfunctioning. Throughout the system, every ship, every station, every piece of equipment that could detect gravitational fields began registering readings that shouldn't have been possible. Near the Retribution, space itself began to bend. The first sign was the nearby asteroid field. Thousands of chunks of rock and metal, each following its own orbit, suddenly began moving in perfect unison. They flowed like water, forming complex patterns in the void. Then the asteroids began to compress, billions of tons of rock and metal squeezed together, forming a perfect sphere. The sphere held its shape for exactly 10 seconds, then expanded into a flat disk. The disk rotated, forming spirals and geometric patterns that would have been impossible without computer-controlled precision. But there were no computers controlling the asteroids, no tractor beams or manipulator fields. The rocks were moving, by direct gravitational control, as if the retribution could reach out and reshape the fundamental forces of physics. The display continued for exactly 1 minute. Complex mathematical patterns formed and dissolved in the asteroid field. Perfect, geometric shapes appeared and transformed into others. At one point, the asteroid spelled out words in perfect Zephyrian script. "This is a demonstration." Then, as suddenly as it began, the demonstration ended. The asteroids gently returned to their original positions, completely unchanged except for their brief, impossible dance. The gravitational readings returned to normal. Space itself relaxed back into its proper shape. The message was clear. The Retribution hadn't fired a single weapon, but it had demonstrated power beyond anything in the galactic database. It could manipulate gravity itself, bend spacetime to its will, and do so with surgical precision. Every military commander in the system understood immediately that their weapons were useless. Energy shields couldn't stop gravity. Armor meant nothing when an enemy could crush your ship into a marble or stretch it into a thread. Speed was meaningless when your opponent could control the very fabric of space. As the implications sank in, the Retribution sent another message. This time, it included detailed sensor readings of every ship in the system. Not just their positions and speeds, but their internal layout, crew complement, weapons specifications, and structural weaknesses. The ship had scanned them all completely, seeing through their armor and shields as if they were made of glass. "Unknown vessels," the cold voice said. "You have 1 hour to provide detailed records of all operations in the sectors originally designated as human colony destinations. Failure to comply will result in immediate defensive action." This time, no one questioned whether they should obey. The Galactic Council had never worked so fast. Within 40 minutes, every database in civilized space was being searched. Historians pulled files from archives that hadn't been accessed in centuries. Military records were cross-referenced with mining reports. Terraforming logs were compared with research station manifests. The picture that emerged was worse than anyone had imagined. "Sector 77, read Archivist Melton, her voice shaking. "Hive Collective Mining Operation established. Stardate 4847. Pre-operation survey noted artificial structures of unknown origin. Structures were classified as primitive debris and removed during site preparation. Those artificial structures had been human colonies. Farming settlements, small cities, maybe even primitive space stations. The mining operation had demolished them without a second thought, treating 1,000-year-old human civilizations as construction obstacles. "Sector 81, continued another historian. Ethereal Atmospheric Conversion Project. Pre-conversion atmosphere contained unusual chemical signatures suggesting industrial activity. Atmosphere was deemed unsuitable for project goals and completely replaced. The humans living on that world had been breathing that atmosphere. When the ethereals changed it to suit their needs, they had committed accidental genocide on a planetary scale. Sector 85 Zephyrian Research Facility. Survey teams reported signs of primitive mining activity and crude orbital installations. These were cleared away to make room for the research station. More colonies destroyed. More humans killed without anyone even realizing they were there. The reports kept coming. Dozens of sectors, hundreds of human settlements all wiped out by galactic progress. The worst part was that it had all been legal. Every operation had followed proper council procedures. Surveys had been conducted, environmental reports filed, safety protocols observed. The only problem was that the surveys had looked for current civilizations, not refugees who wouldn't arrive for hundreds of years. As the hour deadline approached, Vextar prepared the most difficult transmission of his life. The records were complete, documented with cold precision. Every human colony that had been destroyed was listed with dates, methods, and responsible parties. "Retribution," he began, "we have compiled the requested information. The data shows that between stardate 4500 and 6200, Council operations in the Outer Rim sectors resulted in the unintentional destruction of approximately 347 human settlements. The total estimated population loss is..." He paused, checking the numbers again. They couldn't be right. The estimated population loss is 12 billion humans across multiple worlds and space habitats. These actions were taken without knowledge that human colonies existed in those regions. The Galactic Council takes full responsibility for these tragic mistakes. The transmission ended. The Retribution's response came immediately. Mistakes, the cold voice repeated. 12 billion lives lost due to mistakes. Holographic displays suddenly appeared throughout the system, not just on Council ships but on every vessel, every station, every communication device capable of receiving signals. The displays showed detailed images pulled from the Council's own files. The first image was a peaceful farming settlement on a green world. Humans worked in fields of grain that swayed in an alien wind. Children played in dirt. Streets between simple buildings. The settlement looked primitive by galactic standards, but it was clearly home to thousands of people. The second image showed the same location after the Hive Collective mining operation. The green world was gone, replaced by a scarred wasteland of open pits and processing facilities. Every trace of human presence had been erased. Settlement designation, New Terra, the Retribution's voice explained. Established by the colony ship Mayflower after a journey of 837 years. Population, 47,000 humans. Destroyed by mining consortium Alpha 77 without warning or evacuation procedures. More images followed. A small space station orbiting a red dwarf star, obviously built by hand from salvaged materials. The same location later, empty space where Zephyrian researchers had cleared away debris. An underground city on an ice world, tunnels carved over decades by desperate colonists. The same caves later, flooded with poison gas during atmospheric conversion. Each image came with details, colony names, population counts, years of struggle and growth before sudden destruction. The humans had names for their settlements: New Hope, Haven's Rest, Final Frontier, Freedom's Dawn. To the Galactic Council, they had just been survey coordinates and mining rights. The colony ship Enterprise established settlements on 4 worlds. In Sector 89, the voice continued. Total population, 200,000 humans. All settlements were eliminated during a ethereal terraforming project. No attempt was made to contact the inhabitants. The images kept coming, each one more heartbreaking than the last. Orbital farms growing food in converted cargo containers. Underground factories producing simple tools and electronics. Schools, where human children learned about their lost homeworld while building new lives on alien worlds. All gone. All destroyed by species that never even realized they were committing genocide. Settlement designation: Earth's Dream. Population, 320,000 humans. The largest surviving human colony. Built over 4 generations in the caves of an asteroid field in Sector 91. Destroyed when Zephyrian forces cleared the area for a military training facility. Admiral Hextar remembered that operation. His own ships had been involved, vaporizing space junk to create a clear training area. The space junk had been a human city. As the horrific slideshow continued, something else began happening throughout the system. Long-range sensors detected new contacts approaching from multiple directions. More ships, all identical to the Retribution, all moving with the same impossible speed. Admiral, reported sensor operator Kelva, I'm reading 24 additional contacts. Same design as the first ship. They're positioning themselves around all major council facilities in this sector. The pattern was becoming clear across the galaxy. Every major council world, every important military base, every significant colony suddenly found itself host to a human battleship. The ships appeared as if from nowhere, taking positions that would allow them to dominate local space. It wasn't just one ship seeking answers about lost colonies. It was a fleet, an entire civilization that had spent 2,000 years preparing for this moment. How many ships? Vextar asked through the communication link. Current count is over 200, reported the Council's central command. More contacts are appearing every hour. They're surrounding all our major facilities but maintaining distance. No hostile actions yet. The slideshow of destroyed colonies finally ended. The last image showed a simple memorial built on a dead world, carved stone markers with human names written in an alien alphabet. Even their monuments had been destroyed during a later mining expansion. Total human casualties from Galactic Council operations, the Retribution announced. 12.7 billion souls, 47 complete colonies eliminated. The species-designated Homo sapiens reduced from an estimated population of 15 billion to approximately 2 million survivors. 2 million. Out of 15 billion humans who had fled into the Outer Rim, only 2 million had survived the galaxy's accidental genocide. The survivors, the voice continued, were forced to adapt to environments the Galactic Council considered uninhabitable. Radiation-soaked worlds around dying stars, frozen rocks in empty space, the depths of gas-giant atmospheres. Locations so hostile that Council surveys marked them as impossible for intelligent life. Now the galaxy understood why the human ship could manipulate gravity and survive in impossible conditions. The survivors had been forced to develop technology that could work anywhere, under any circumstances. They had spent 2,000 years evolving while hiding in places the rest of the galaxy couldn't even visit. We adapted, the Retribution said. We learned. We grew strong, and we never forgot what was taken from us. More images appeared, but these were different. They showed human settlements in places that should have killed them. Cities built inside the coronas of stars, protected by impossible energy fields. Colonies thriving in the crushing gravity of neutron star systems. Fast ships that harvested energy from black hole accretion disks. The survivors hadn't just endured. They had transcended every limitation the galaxy thought was absolute. The question now, the cold voice said, is what the Galactic Council intends to do about its crimes. Throughout the galaxy, 200 human battleships waited for an answer. Each one was capable of reshaping space itself, crewed by the descendants of people who had learned to survive anything the universe could throw at them. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council realized they were no longer the dominant power in their region of space. The primitives they had accidentally destroyed had returned as something far beyond their understanding, and they were very, very angry. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 18 hours straight. Representatives from every major species were present, either in person or through quantum communication links. The chamber that had once buzzed with comfortable political discussions now thrummed with barely controlled fear. We must respond, insisted General Kexmar. 200 warships cannot be allowed to dictate terms to the entire galaxy. With what? Snapped Admiral Hextar through the communication link from his position near the Retribution. Did you not see the gravity demonstration? Our most advanced weapons are primitive compared to their technology. Vextar studied the tactical displays showing human ships positioned throughout Council space. Each battleship was massive, easily 3 times larger than the Council's biggest dreadnoughts. But size wasn't what worried the military commanders. It was the fact that the ships had appeared everywhere at once, moving through space in ways that suggested they could ignore the normal laws of physics. What do we know about their current capabilities? Asked Ethereal Prime. Chief Science Advisor Nalteth, an elderly Zephyrian with deep purple crystal formations, consulted his data tablets. Analysis of the gravity manipulation demonstrates technology at least 500 years ahead of our most advanced research. The energy requirements alone should be impossible to generate with any known power source. They're using exotic matter, added Dr. Yelnir from the Hive Collective. Our sensors detect gravitational effects that can only be produced by manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. This is theoretical technology we've never seen implemented. How did they develop such advances in only 2,000 years? Wondered historian Yelsa. Necessity, came a new voice through the communication system. Every representative in the chamber froze. The cold voice belonged to the Retribution, but somehow the ship was now monitoring their private council sessions. Survival required adaptation, the voice continued. Your species developed technology in comfortable environments, with abundant resources and stable conditions. Humanity learned to thrive where no other species could exist. You're listening to our private discussions, accused Vextar. Privacy is a luxury for those who are not hiding crimes, the human voice replied. The Galactic Council will conduct all deliberations in the open while human colonies remain unaccounted for. More data began appearing on the chamber's displays. Not just images this time, but detailed records pulled from the Council's most secure databases. Files that should have been impossible to access remotely were being broadcast for everyone to see. Operation Clear Sky Sector 93, the Retribution announced. Zephyrian Military Command authorized the destruction of unidentified orbital installations to create a buffer zone around Research Facility Epsilon 7. The installations were human space habitats housing 89,000 colonists. The hour files showed the actual military reports from the operation. Admiral Koltar, Hextar's predecessor, had personally ordered the destruction of what his officers reported as primitive space junk. The space junk had been an entire human civilization, living in converted generation ships. They were still using their original colony vessels, explained the human voice. Ships that had traveled for 1,000 years, converted into permanent habitats. Your forces destroyed them without even scanning for life signs. More files appeared. Each one showed another routine council operation that had eliminated human settlements. The pattern was always the same. Council forces would find evidence of primitive activity and clear it away without investigation. The Atmospheric Cleansing Project, Sector 87, the voice continued. Ethereal terraforming teams detected contamination in the atmosphere of 12 worlds. The contamination was oxygen and carbon dioxide being produced by human agricultural settlements. The terraforming process eliminated all traces of the contamination. Ethereal primes, gaseous, form swirled with distress patterns. We thought we were cleaning up industrial pollution. Our sensors showed artificial chemical signatures that didn't match natural atmospheric conditions. You were detecting the breath of 200,000 humans, the Retribution replied coldly. Their crime was growing food to feed their children. The revelations kept coming, each one more damning than the last. The Council learned that their own databases contained evidence of dozens of human colonies that had been destroyed, but the evidence had been filed under categories like debris removal, contamination cleanup, and obstacle elimination. No one had bothered to investigate what the debris actually was. The mining expansion program, Sectors 75 through 91, the human voice announced. Hive collective operations eliminated primitive structures on 47 worlds. Total human casualties, 6.3 billion. Hive Queen Zizkith's compound eyes reflected the terrible statistics scrolling across the displays. We performed standard surveys. No intelligent life was detected. Your surveys looked for energy signatures matching galactic technology standards, the Retribution explained. Human colonies used minimal energy consumption to preserve resources. Your sensors were calibrated to ignore anything below the threshold. That indicated galactic civilization. It was true. Council survey protocols specifically filtered out low-energy signatures to avoid false positives from natural phenomena. Any civilization that couldn't generate enough power to register as significant was automatically classified as non-existent. The humans had been living simple lives, using minimal technology to stretch their resources across multiple generations. To Council sensors they had been invisible. Even if we had known, protested General Kexmar, the humans were occupying legally claimed territories. Council law permits the removal of unauthorized settlements from licensed development zones. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Council law, the Retribution repeated. Tell us, General Kexmar, how many other species has the Council accidentally eliminated through legal development projects? The question hung in the air like a blade. Every representative in the chamber began to realize the true scope of what had happened. If the Council had missed an entire human diaspora, how many other species had they overlooked? Run the analysis, ordered Vextar quietly. It took 3 hours to complete the search. When the results came back, they sent shockwaves through every Council world. 47 species, reported archivist Melton, her voice barely above a whisper. Over the past 3,000 years, Council expansion has eliminated 47 species classified as non-intelligent or primitive. The list scrolled across the displays. Most of the names meant nothing to current representatives, lost civilizations that had been erased and forgotten. But the patterns were identical to what had happened to humanity. Small colonies eliminated during mining operations. Agricultural settlements destroyed during terraforming. Primitive space installations cleared away as obstacles to construction projects. Each elimination had been legal, properly documented, and completely forgotten. The Galactic Council hadn't just committed accidental genocide against humanity. They had been doing it for thousands of years, eliminating any species that didn't meet their standards for galactic civilization. The Velnari Collective, the Retribution read from the files, eliminated 800 years ago when their asteroid habitats were cleared for a Zephyrian military base. Population, 12 million. Crime, insufficient energy signatures to register as intelligent life. The Mordesh Republic, eliminated during atmospheric conversion of their homeworld. Population, 3 billion. Crime, using biological technology instead of mechanical systems. The Kethmar Unity, eliminated when their deep ocean cities were classified as geological anomalies during underwater mining operations. Population, 800 million. Crime, building cities below the depth threshold for standard lifeform scans. The list went on and on. Dozens of civilizations, billions of lives, all lost to the Council's systematic expansion and its failure to recognize intelligence that didn't match galactic norms. "We didn't know," whispered Hive Queen Ziazexeth. "Ignorance is not absolution," the Retribution replied. The Council created procedures that made these atrocities inevitable, then chose not to look too closely at the results. As the full scope of the Council's crimes became clear, long-range sensors detected something new. More ships were arriving, but these weren't human battleships. They were vessels of unknown design, built with technologies that the galaxy had never seen. "New contacts approaching all major Council facilities," reported Admiral Hextar. "Design, unknown, but energy signatures suggest they're using the same exotic technology as the human ships." The truth dawned on several representatives at once. The humans hadn't just survived their exile, they had found other survivors, other species that had been written off as extinct by Council expansion. "The Velnari survive," the Retribution announced, confirming their fears. As do the Mordesh, the Kethmar Unity, and 31 other species the Council believed eliminated. They adapted to environments you considered uninhabitable. They developed technologies you thought impossible. "We gathered the survivors," the cold voice continued. "We shared knowledge, resources, and purpose." The silence stretched for nearly an hour. The Galactic Council chamber, which had echoed with political debates for 3,000 years, was filled only with the quiet hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of ships in space. Every representative stared at their displays, reading and rereading the evidence of their species' crimes. Finally, Vextar stood. His crystal body caught the chamber lights and cast rainbow patterns on the walls. But the colors seemed muted, now as if even the light itself was subdued by the weight of what they had learned. "Retribution," he said, his voice carrying across the communication channels to every human ship in the galaxy. "The Galactic Council acknowledges the terrible injustices committed against humanity and the other survivor species. We take full responsibility for these actions even though they were unintentional. What do you want from us?" The response came not from the Retribution, but from a new voice. This one was different, warmer somehow, though still carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who spoke for billions. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation vessel Retribution. I am speaking for the Alliance of the Forgotten, representing 34 survivor species and approximately 8 billion souls." The chamber stirred. After hours of the cold, emotionless announcements, hearing a human name and a personal introduction was strangely reassuring. "We do not want revenge," Captain Chen continued. "Revenge would serve no purpose except to add more death to the galaxy's already bloody history. What we want is to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else." New holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, but these were different from the images of destroyed colonies. These showed detailed plans, constitutional documents, and legal frameworks. "The Universal Rights Charter," Captain Chen explained, "a set of fundamental rights that apply to all intelligent life, regardless of technology level, energy output, or conformity to galactic norms." The document was comprehensive, covering everything from the right to exist without interference to protection from forced relocation. But the most important clause was simple. Any species that could demonstrate intelligence, creativity, or self-organization would be recognized as sapient, with full protection under galactic law. "No more will colonies be eliminated because they use too little energy," the captain continued. "No more will civilizations be erased because they build with biology instead of metal, or live underwater, or exist in forms that galactic sensors don't recognize." General Kexmar studied the charter with a military officer's eye for detail. This would require complete restructuring of Council survey protocols. Every development project would need extensive investigation for potential intelligent life. "Yes," Captain Chen replied simply. "It would slow expansion, increase costs, and require the Council to actually look for intelligence instead of just scanning for energy signatures. The economic implications alone," began Trade Administrator Pexval. "Are irrelevant," interrupted a new voice. This one was clearly alien, speaking through translation systems that struggled with concepts that didn't exist in galactic languages. "The Velnari have no patience for economic arguments from those who profit from our extinction." More voices joined in, each representing one of the survivor species. The Mordesh spoke in harmonics that made the translation systems create strange, musical tones. The Kethmar Unity communicated through quantum-linked collective consciousness that came across as multiple voices speaking in perfect unison. The cost of compliance, said Captain Chen, is nothing compared to the cost of the alternative. She didn't need to elaborate. The alternative was clear. Over 300 ships with impossible technology, crewed by species that had learned to survive anything, positioned to dominate every major council facility. If the council accepts the Universal Rights Charter, the captain continued, the Alliance will provide assistance in implementing the new protocols. Our sensor technology can detect intelligence informs your equipment misses. Our experience with hostile environments can help identify habitable zones you've never considered. And if we refuse? Asked Vextar, though he already knew the answer. Then the Alliance will implement the charter unilaterally. Every council operation will be monitored. Any action that threatens non-galactic intelligence will be prevented by force if necessary. The implications were staggering. The council would become a junior partner in its own territory, subject to oversight by species they had never heard of until today. But as the representatives studied the charter, many began to realize it wasn't just about preventing future genocides. The document included provisions for technological sharing, cultural exchange programs, and joint exploration initiatives. The survivor species weren't just offering to police the Council's activities, they were offering to share knowledge gained from 2,000 years of development in impossible conditions. Your gravity manipulation technology, said Chief Science Advisor Nalteth. If the Council accepts the Charter, would that knowledge be shared? The Alliance has technologies that make gravity manipulation look primitive, Captain Chen replied. We've learned to manipulate time, space, and fundamental forces in ways your science considers impossible. All of this knowledge would be available to species that prove they can be trusted with it. The offer was almost too good to believe. The survivor species had clearly advanced far beyond anything in Council databases. Access to their technology could revolutionize galactic civilization. There's something else, the captain added. Something the Council needs to understand about the true situation. New displays appeared, showing star charts of the galaxy. But these charts included regions the Council had never explored, areas beyond their territory that had always been marked as empty space. The Council controls approximately 12% of this galaxy, Captain Chen announced. The rest is populated by thousands of species you've never encountered, most of them far more advanced than current galactic civilization. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Council had always assumed they were the dominant power in their region of space, possibly in the entire galaxy. We didn't just adapt to hostile environments, the captain continued. We made contact with civilizations that consider your most advanced technology to be barely above stone tools. The Alliance exists because we proved that not all galactic powers are driven by expansion and resource acquisition. The charts showed trade routes, communication networks, and political boundaries spanning vast regions of space. Civilizations with names the Council had never heard, using technologies the Council couldn't imagine, engaged in conflicts and alliances on scales that dwarfed anything in Council history. The galaxy is much larger and more complex than you know, Captain Chen said. The Council has been operating in isolation, expanding without regard for consequences, believing you were the pinnacle of galactic development. You are not. Then, why haven't these advanced civilizations contacted us? Asked Ethereal Prime. Because until now you weren't worth contacting, came the blunt reply. Species that casually eliminate entire civilizations without noticing are generally considered too primitive for diplomatic relations. The insult stung, but it was clearly true. If the galaxy was full of advanced civilizations, the Council's behavior would mark them as barbarians unfit for contact with truly developed species. The Universal Rights Charter isn't just about protecting primitive species, Captain Chen explained. It's about proving to the greater galactic community that Council species can evolve beyond their current limitations. You're offering us a chance to join galactic civilization, Vextar said, understanding finally dawning. Real galactic civilization, not just our local group of species. Yes, the captain confirmed, but only if you can demonstrate that you've moved beyond the phase of development where you accidentally commit genocide as a side effect of industrial expansion. The vote took 6 hours. Every species in the Council had to debate internally, consulting with their home governments and military leaders. But the result was never really in doubt. The evidence was overwhelming, the offer too valuable to refuse, and the alternative too terrible to contemplate. When the final tally was announced, the Universal Rights Charter was approved by unanimous consent. The Galactic Council formally adopts the Universal Rights Charter, Vextar announced. All future expansion and development operations will be conducted in compliance with these principles. The response from the Alliance fleet was immediate. Instead of the cold voices they'd been hearing, Captain Chen's tone became warm and welcoming. "Welcome to the real galaxy," she said. "There's so much we have to show you." Over the following weeks, the transformation began. Alliance sensor ships arrived to help retrain Council survey teams. Survivor species shared techniques for detecting intelligence in forms the Council had never imagined. Ancient ruins that had been dismissed as geological formations were revealed to be the remains of civilizations millions of years old. But perhaps most importantly, the Council finally understood their true place in the galaxy. They were not the dominant power they had believed themselves to be, but rather a collection of young species taking their first tentative steps toward true galactic citizenship.